We're learning about Parsha's Chayei. We have a number of topics to discuss, and hopefully we can be elevated. I do want to share that I believe, in my humble opinion, that Chayei, if I could bring out a theme this evening in Chayei, one of the themes that we have, there are many themes, but one theme is the subtlety of the Parsha. So.
Subtlety means something not obvious.
Something that's not obvious in the Parsha. We're going to bring out some of the subtleties. And I think this is a major focus that we have in the Parsha, is really the subtleties of words that are used or that are not used, and expressions and things that we have to learn. And I think there's a big lesson that we have to take from that lesson of subtlety. So, for a very quick synopsis, I don't think I can give a quick synopsis, but Chayei, even though it's really not talking about the life of Sarah, it's called Chayei. Usually when you have a Parsha, that Parsha and has a name of somebody, the name of that person is going to be a major discussion in the Parsha, such as Parshas Noach, such as Parshas Yisro, right, Jethro, where we can discuss everything about his life. And then Balak, the king, you have it with Korach and Pinchas. Maybe Pinchas is the one that's most similar to that of Chayei, because Pinchas has really basically the first aliyah that talks about Pinchas, the rest, nothing else. Chayei is not actually called after, it's just called Chayei, the life of Sarah, and the life of Sarah begins with her death. So doesn't sound so exciting. So it says, Vayu Chayei Mea Shana, the life of Sarah was 100 years, 127 years, and she dies. Verse number 2, she dies. So the Parsha is not about Sarah, the Parsha is about Chayei. And seemingly what that means is that Parsha being about Chayei is not about the story of her life, because the story of her life, for the most part, we learned in last week's Parsha. Now she's talking about the legacy. The legacy of Sarah is what this is really all about. So when we talk about Chayei, the life of Sarah, when we talk about what someone's life is about, life is really about legacy. It's not what I do, but it's really what I leave over. That's really what life is. So if you look and you understand this concept, one of the major things that happens in this legacy of Sarah, the life of Sarah, is the first thing is that Avram is going to purchase Machpelah, the Cave of the Patriarchs. This is a major legacy changer. This is now going to be the place where all the patriarchs are going to be buried. And she's now setting the tone as to levels of Kedusha, that the importance of burial and where burials are actually going to be, and how a person's soul is elevated, and where people are going to pray by a person's kever, by a person's grave. So it rolls into that level. After that, Abraham then decides that he needs to find a wife for his son, for Yitzchak. Again, what's his legacy? The legacy is actually going to be who Yitzchak wants to marry. Avram is going to give over this command over to his servant Eliezer, and he's going to tell Eliezer, this is what I need you to get. Certain type of characteristics. If you're not going to find from there, I'm not interested. Eliezer goes waiting for certain types of miracles. Those miracles actually happen. He sees the quality of the woman that's portraying this, the essence of who she is, the way she gives out the water over to the camels, over to him, and the like. She sees that this is a true chesed-oriented woman. It's not your average individual. So you see here now, Avram plants a seed. Eliezer is looking for something specific and finds it right away. Rivka's ready to go, and the story goes on. When does the story of that marriage end? Well, the story of that marriage ends after we repeat the story of Eliezer twice. Following that repeated story at the end, when they actually get married, hold on, keep going, it's all the way towards the end. The pasuk says, so the servant Eliezer spoke to Yitzchak, told him all the things that happened, these amazing miracles, everything that happened. Yitzchak Sarah, and Yitzchak brought her into the tent of Sarah, Imo, his mother, Vayikach es Rivka, and he took Rivka, Vatehilo leisha, and she became his wife, Vayaveh, and he loved her, Vayinachem Yitzchak achar Imo, and Yitzchak was, we'll say, appeased, was consoled, was able to reframe the loss of his mother, and be able to have this wife, Rivka. And so what we see this Chayei is that what was Yitzchak yearning for the entire time? Why end this whole story? Just say that and Yitzchak got married and they can move on. But it doesn't say that. It says that when he loved her, when he got married and he loved her, then the ultimate came, and that is Vayinachem Yitzchak acharei imo. And Yitzchak was consoled or now reframed after the loss of his mother. But not the loss of his mother, just for his mother, which meant he saw that with him taking a wife like Rivka, he was now continuing the legacy of his mother. He saw everything within her. Rashi tells us those things, that the miracles that were happening for Rivka, and now came back, that they were happening for Sarah, they stopped. Now Rivka was brought into the marriage and they came back. Why? The legacy of Sarah continues on. So when we talk about this Parsha being Chayei Sarah, and it's really not much of Sarah's life, it's more of Sarah's legacy. And that's why the Torah tells us, Vayu Chayei Sarah, opening up with this idea that the life of Sarah was 127 years old, even though she dies the second verse right away. But the story about this Parsha is really about how you build your legacy. And the way you're going to build your legacy is not what you're telling people to do, it's what you're going to watch people do after. After a person leaves this world, what the people then do with the loss of that person, now we actually see how the legacy is actually created. So it's a beautiful opening to this Parsha. It's not called Sarah. It's not called Sarah and what she does. It's a legacy that she leads, and the legacy that she leaves everyone, and we watch everyone open up this beautiful package of Sarah, of who she actually represents. So it's an amazing understanding to see this as Chayei Sarah in this realm. So there's a famous Rashi. Rashi opens up in the beginning of this idea that the ways of Sarah were 127, 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. Shnei Chayei Sarah. These are the years of Sarah. Many of you have heard this before. Why did it say 120 and 7? Just say 127. Okay, so we're just going to explain some of the ideas to understand this. The Rashi is the famous one that people are familiar with, but we'll just briefly say. Rashi says, why does it say the word Shana, year, after each of the numbers, as each of the digits go by? B'chol klal Lomar, to tell us that each one has to be expounded by itself. 100 years has to be expounded, 20 years, and 7 years has to be expounded. What does it mean? Bas kuf kibas chaf lechet. When she was 100 years old, she was like a 20-year-old with regards to sin. Which means less sin, you hope. I mean, could be some people in their 20s have more sins. I don't know. But basically, we're assuming here, you're 100 years old, you only had as much sins as a 20-year-old could potentially have. What else? Just like a 20-year-old doesn't really have that much sin. Why? Because they're not a bas onshin. She's not worthy of having death by the heavenly court. That starts at the age of 20. Av bas kuf, so 200 was not going to have sin. Okay? So a 100 was like 20. I'm going to ask the question, and I'm not going to have the answer. When she was 20, she was like 7. 7 with regards to beauty. She was as beautiful when she was 20 as she was a 7-year-old. Okay? So now, the word Shana is presented 3 times. 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. Why does Shana need to be presented 3 times? To tell us that when she was like 100, she was like 20. When she was like 20, she was like 7. And when she was 7, she was like?
The third one is not needed.
There's nothing there. Maybe she was like 100.
Wisdom, I thought.
Wisdom, could be. Rashi doesn't quote that, right? So really, what was that 100? Meaning 7 was beauty. 20 was sin. And 100 was potentially wisdom. Why is wisdom at 100? I don't know. That's a part of the question. Okay? 127.
20 is sin, yeah.
20 is sin. 20 is sin, which means up until the age of 20, you're not accountable for all of your sins. There's some sins you're not accountable for. Okay? The question that's also posed is 20 for sin or 20 for beauty? 7 for sin or 7 for beauty? A 7-year-old has really no sin. Right, they're a little kid. They're not held accountable. If anything, the parents are held accountable. A 20-year-old has sin. A 20-year-old also has beauty. So why is it switched around? Why would we say that she's like a 20-year-old in regards to sin? I don't know. When it comes to sin, I'd much rather be like a 7-year-old. And when it comes to beauty, probably a 20-year-old. Right? So what is a 7-year-old's beauty? What does that mean, actually?
Baby.
Baby. Little kid.
Like innocence.
Innocence, right? So we're going to be stuck either way, by the way. Either way, we're going to be stuck. Because if we say that she's 7, that it means innocence, it means that when you're a 20-year-old, you may be more beautiful, but you're actually more focused on your beauty. You're basically focused on your beauty. There's no question. You can't deny that. When you're a 7-year-old, you're not really thinking about your beauty. You could be putting on makeup all over your face and say, it doesn't look beautiful, and your parents be like, that's so cute, but it doesn't look good. And you can be putting on your parents' clothing when you're 7 years old, but you're not really focused on beauty. So beauty in a person that age is the definition of innocence, right? So we have to translate this a little bit differently. Okay, so she's 7-year-old. When she was 20, she was like a 7-year-old with regards to her beauty. I can accept that, but I'm stuck with a 20-year-old then. Why does a 20-year-old now have sin? Why is a 20-year-old now the one that's the bearer of sin? That's the question I'm presenting. Okay, that's what I'm saying. When it says he's 123, you always get stuck with one of them. Because 100 is not mentioning what she is. Maybe it's wisdom. And if we're taking beauty at the form of innocence, then what happens at the age of 20? Okay, I don't have an answer. I'm just presenting the question over here. Schwab points out an idea that what Rashi is really telling us over here, Shnei Chayei Kulan Shav Latova, they're all equal when it comes to goodness. Now Schwab points out very simply, if we want to talk about legacy, if we want to understand what a legacy is really all about, then what's your legacy? So you can say, well, this person started this organization, and that's their legacy. This person wrote this book, and that's their legacy. Okay? Right? Like you think of J.R. Tolkien, right? So he has a legacy. Right? There's an estate, now they're making movies and more movies. That's his legacy. We don't really know anything about the guy. And at some point, if the movies are going to have no value, the book might continue to have somewhat of a value. That's a person's legacy. What happened to other parts of his life? We don't really know the other parts of his life. When it comes to our legacies that we want to leave this world with, when it comes to that kind of legacy, the legacy is not necessarily going to be the organization that we're going to create or the new program that's going to start because of us. The legacy, as we know from Parshas Noach, is what is the ultimate, what's the definition of children? The Parsha, Rashi tells us in Parshas Noach, the definition of real children, what you actually give birth to, are the mitzvahs that a person does. The positive actions that a person actually creates within the world. When we talk about legacy, we have to look at our own legacy and what we're going to build. And when we want to build our legacy, we have to ask ourselves, is it one thing that I do that's my legacy? So that the next 50 or 100 years, someone will recognize that legacy? If you think about it, let's take a store. I was just passing by Robinson's May. They still have one of the signs up for Robinson's May. For those who are not familiar with Robinson's May, it's a competitor to Macy's. Right? Robinson's May was a competitor to Macy's. At one point, it was May Company. Right? May Company, and then there was Robinson's. And then they combined into Robinson's May. And then they went belly up. Or maybe they were bought out by somebody, but they're not in existence anymore. Now there's remnants of a sign. When you look at the Beverly Hilton, you'll see a sign for Robinson's May. That's what you'll see. But Robinson's May doesn't exist anymore. On the East Coast, it never existed anyway. Macy's was always the thing. And so when you think about Robinson's May, and you think about Mr. Robinson and Mr. May, or Mrs., whoever it is that created the company, at what point will their legacy have no value anymore? Right now, people, I remember Robinson's May. Right? But in 100 years from now, there's nobody that's going to remember Robinson's May. If you're an inventor, perhaps you will. Maybe Ford. Someone will remember Ford. Einstein. People remember these things. When we talk about our legacies, sometimes we think legacies have to be something so massive, so big, that's named after me. It's named after me. I remember when I was in 6th grade, I had this terrible rash that overtook my body. And I had to sit in the bathtub for hours. And we went to the doctor, and he couldn't figure out what it was. So I said, so could you name it after me? I'm like, I'm in 6th grade. Can you name it after me? I mean, like, this could be the start of something big, you know? Kleinpox, you know, something, you know, like, what could it be, you know? He's like,
smallpox. They already have.
They have smallpox. Very good, excellent. Right? Klein is small, right? Good. They already had it, so maybe that's what it was, right? So you're like looking for something that you're going to be named after. So we're going to look at this Rashi again. Rashi's going to tell us here, when we look at a legacy of Sarah, the legacy of Sarah, you're not going to see, it's going to be so subtle, you're not going to notice it. Rashi tells us over here, 100 is like 20, 20 is like 7. Shnei Chayei Sarah kulan shavin latova. Every single one of her years is perfected for good. Perfected for good means, says Schwab, a person's going to live out their life. And as the Tehillim says, a person could live 70 years, 80 years. Okay, sometimes a person could live 120 years, right? Or we don't know too many people. Like the oldest person will be like 113, 14, whatever the number is. Maybe the most recent, longest living person was 119 years old. When they're leaving that legacy, when you're living, let's say, 90 years. So how long, what happens in those 90 years? Well, there's a lot of football games watched. There's a lot of shopping done. There's a lot of music played. There's a lot of food eaten. There's a lot of time slept. There's a lot of things that happen. How many of those quote-unquote years are we actually spending Latova for good? So says Rashi over here, if you want to understand Sarah's legacy, it was that every moment of her life really was to a state of perfection. What does that mean? As a 7-year-old, it's hard for us to imagine, but as a 20-year-old, we can imagine this, which means when a person actually has a goal and a focus to bring themselves to a higher level of experience, what that means is that when they're 20 years old and they're eating, that eating is a higher level of experience. When they're sleeping, it's a higher level of experience. When they're doing other things that's broadening their lives and creating a sense of goodness for themselves, that's a much higher experience that they have. Kulan, all of them were good. But says the Shrab, for most of us, if a person's living, let's say, he gives an example, 70, 80 years based on the Pasuk and Tehillim, let's say a person lives 80 years. How much of those years are wasted doing nothing? Or nothing productive in the world of bringing one to a higher level? How many? 20, 30, maybe 40? Who knows? Think about it. 79, right? It could be.
Out of 80.
And the reason why you might be correct if it's 79, it's because when we eat and sleep, if that eating and sleeping is not leading to something on the positive realm of we're creating that legacy for us, well then you're right, then eating and sleeping is also included in the wasted days. But if eating and sleeping is part, if I know, if I'm creating that legacy in my character and everything else that I do, then even the eating and sleeping is also considered elevated. And that's part of that legacy as well. So when I sleep, it's not just simply I'm sleeping, it's the legacy is building and the person needs to sleep, so that's all part of the same thing. So that's what the Torah is telling us. When you want to understand legacy and the power of legacy is really understood through an individual really having this big framework of where they'd like to be and what they'd like to create within the world, within their actions, within their midos, their character, and within their goals that they have. And if we can create that and we start working towards our legacies, then every time we eat and every time we sleep and every time we do anything else, that's also part of that legacy building. It's a pretty amazing thought that Rashi is really hinting to us over here. That legacy can grow. We can multiply it. Because a person can say, okay, I only have 50 years left, or 20 years, or 100 years left to my life. What can I do? Well, that 100 years is now going to be duplicated with the way we eat and the way we sleep, because it's all going to go towards that. So this, says Shrab, is part of what legacy is really all about, is creating that framework so that we're going to do amazing things. That's really a beautiful idea that he shares over here. Instead of having a person can live 80 or 100 years, have 20 years of productivity, really those 100 years that they live, they can have 80 years of productivity. And maybe there'll be some years of fun and some time of wasting. But even for us, if we have our years of productivity and we need to relax and we need to take a break and we need to go on vacations, those are also part of that same productivity because it helps us when we have that goal and we have that legacy we actually want to build. Okay, we're moving forward on the Parsha, and just to mention the next level of subtlety. So that first subtlety, which we didn't really mention it as a subtlety, is it says 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. And it's subtle. It doesn't tell us directly that we're supposed to, live out that life. You have to infer it from the verse that you lived a whole life. And that's a subtle moment. And in many of our lives, we can stop, look back and go, hey, you know what? That was amazing. Oh, I did have a wonderful year that year. I did do amazing things in my service to Hashem. Wow, it wasn't just, wasted. There was so much growth that I had over that time. It's a very special thing. So it's a little bit of subtlety over there. Next we're going to look at is Ephron. So Ephron, the reason why I like the word Ephron is because how do you say a pencil in Hebrew? An iparon is a pencil, right? So whenever, this is a joke when you go to Israel for the first time. The joke when you go to Israel for the first time is that when someone asks you for money or directions, you go, Slicha, ani iparon me America, right? Basically, you have no idea what you're saying. I'm a pencil from America, right? Like you just totally have no idea what you're saying. Okay, I don't know why that was the word chosen, but that was the joke that people would always say. Slicha ni paron me America, and they just walk away going, Americans don't know anything,
Maybe they're saying I'm from America.
Yeah, whatever they're saying. So here,
It's working.
so he goes to the story of Ephron. Well, I just want to briefly mention the story of Ephron. The story of Ephron, to me, it's a bothersome story. It's like a bait and switch story. You know, it's a person getting swindled in downtown Manhattan, you know, for things. But Avram is holding his cool to the entire story, and he knows exactly what's happening. So I just want to mention briefly this idea, and that's really the subtlety that we see over here. The Torah goes on, Rashi brings it out, this idea that the people of Ches, Bnei Chet, or Ches over here, Chetaf, are the ones surrounding this Ephron man who somehow became the chaplain or leader of the homeowners association, you know, of the town over here. Now he's trying to get all the money that he can out of this quote unquote unsuspecting individual. So you know, Sarah dies. He needs to bury her. He's in a state of disarray. You have to admit. And he says, "Please, let me bury over here." And the Bnei Chet return to him and they say, "Listen, you are a prince amongst the men over here. Unbelievable. You know, you could choose anything. We'd love to have you here." And he bows down to them and he speaks to them again. He says, "Can I bury them here?" Shimaoni, please, can you speak over to your homeowners leader over here, Ephron ben Sochar, and allow me to have this? You know, I'll pay full cash for the whole story. Ephron is there, and they have this dialogue as to whether they're going to do it, whether they're going to do it or not. Let me give it to you free. No, I want to buy the whole thing. So just one thing that stands out over here. Ephron, the commentaries say over here that Abraham says a little and does a lot. Ephron says a lot and does a little. And this is the making of what an individual is really all about, is you said you want to give it to me free, and then you're only willing to take it for $400. I'm willing to pay whatever I can, but he listens. And the story goes over here, says, look, Arba'meo shekel kesef beini u'bein chamahi, 400 shekel of kesef between you and me. Really, what is it? This is 400, we'll call it talents of silver, for lack of a better term. What, between you and me? Come on, we're friends. Ve'ismei yischak kavor. You bury your dead over here, it's fine, no problem. Vayishma Avram el Ephron, vayishkol Avram Ephron. Avram listens to Ephron, and he weighs out the silver, and he gives it to him at the highest rate. Okay, so the commentaries point out over here that the idea of Ephron comes from the word afar, which is basically dust, or it could come from, which is also the same word as oferet, which is lead coming from the ground. That the essence of who he is something who's so base, he's not really looking to elevate, he's just looking there for himself within everything. And the verse is, Vayishma Avraham el Ephron. Avram heard to Ephron. He heard what Ephron was deeply trying to say. And what Ephron was basically intimating over here was like, you know what, we really don't want you, but we really want your money. Okay, we really don't want you. So after this whole thing, he says, come on. What is really $400? Let's say 400 talents between friends, between you and me? Come on. You've been to those experiences before when you go to the store and you're haggling with the guy and he says, Chaver, my friend, come on. You know I have to put food on my table also. Ever go to a car salesman, right? My kids have to eat also. Yeah, but they don't have to eat caviar every night, you know? But my kids have to eat also. Come on, this is a business. When they say that, that's when I almost lose it, You really care. I don't even think you have kids, buddy. But this is the line that they have, The guy's like 90 years old. My kids have to eat also, Come on. Your kids are out of the house. But they tell it to you like, come on, we're friends. Come on. And you know that there's zero relationship there. There's zero. Whenever they start talking in this realm over here, you know that they want nothing more than to end the deal with you on the losing side. So here, Vayishma Avram el Ephron. Avram hears Ephron to Ephron. I mean, there's nothing here to talk about over here. There's nobody home. I'm just simply, I need this no matter what more than anything else, and therefore he pays it. So subtlety, as Rashi points out over here, is that it wasn't just simply that Avraham acquiesced. It was that Avram heard exactly what Ephron was saying. He read between the lines of this entire story over here to be able to have that. But you know what? He held his cool. and he understood that the legacy of Sarah actually has to be built, so we have to continue on. The Malbim tells us, over here that after this story happens, so Avram says, I need to find a wife for my son Yitzchak. Avram is blessed with everything. Bakol. I just quote you a fantastic medrash. The medrash says the word bakol, three-way dispute. I'm not going to go through now. Maybe in if anyone wants to be added to the WhatsApp shirim that I send out, let me know after. I can put you onto it. But the question is bakol, and maybe we'll address it another time. It says Avram was old and coming in days, and Hashem blessed Avraham bakol with everything. So I don't think Rashi says over here bakol. Bakol olav gematria ben. He blessed him with everything. He had a son. Now that he has a son, he needs to find a wife for it. But the Medrash says that bakol is, according to one view, that bakol is a son. According to the other view, bakol means he had a daughter. And the third view is he had a daughter, and her name was bakol. Right? Which the whole thing is bizarre unto itself. Like, I didn't hear about this daughter. I don't know where'd she come from. Why would you call a girl bakol? I'm Nicole, I get it. Bakol? I don't know. So, I don't know. I don't know where Nicole comes from. Yes, I do. Okay. That's the medrash as to what that actually means. A good question. Did he have the daughter? Did he not have the daughter? It seems that he didn't have the daughter, and the medrash is teaching us something deeper than simply the word that he actually had a daughter. But what does it mean, bakol? Just parenthetically, when we say Berkat Hamazon, for those that are not familiar with it, if you are, then you'll know it. It says, help me out, it says, bakol mikol kol in Berkat Hamazon, in the last bracha. It says, can you help me out, anybody? I'm backing up.
Would you like a venture?
No, I missed it. You have a bencher? Give me a bencher. I had the ending of it, but I can't get the beginning of the lines right before it.
59, I think.
And the lines right before it. You think I know benching by heart, but when you have to pick something out in the middle, it doesn't always come. Yeah?
I remember everything until someone tells me to remember it.
Okay, here we go. So the end of benching, we say when we're blessing everyone, when you Baruch Hashem, may you bless us, Avi, Mari, father, parents, all these things, all the people that are here, O son of Eskal Shalanu, all of us, and all that we have, commotion is Baruch Hu, the same way that our forefathers were blessed. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Bakol, Mikol, and Kol. So what does that mean? It means Avram was blessed with Bakol, with this week's Parsha. Yitzchak is going to be blessed with Kol. It's going to be, I think, next week's Parsha. And Mikol, and Yaakov is going to be blessed with Kol. Right? So if you look in the Parshas as we go along, they're going to say that Hashem blessed them with Bakol, the next one with Mikol, and the second one with Kol. So that over here it's saying that Hashem blessed Avram Bakol. So that Bakol could be a daughter, or the fact that Avram actually had all the wealth that he needed nothing further. So at this point, after he blesses Avram says, I need to get my servant Eliezer to go ahead and find a wife for my son Yitzchak. And what's interesting to note is that in all experiences over here, Avram trusts Eliezer with everything. He went to battle with Eliezer. He did everything with Eliezer. The guy is his right-hand man. Comes to getting married now. Take an oath, buddy. Okay, buddy is my own addition. Take an oath, right? What do you mean, take an oath? I am your life over here. Yeah, we're talking about my son. I don't care. You're taking an oath. Okay, so it's just interesting to note over here that Eliezer, even though he's his right-hand man and would never, ever deviate away, but we're going to see there's an underpinning that happens in the Parsha that eventually is going to get fleshed out and come to this amazing ending at the end, and that is that Eliezer, throughout this ordeal, or throughout this experience, is an Eved Canaan. He is a slave of Canaan. Okay, he's a slave, but he's a Canaanite slave. And so Rashi says over here that when he is about to appoint Eliezer, so it says, put your hand under my thigh so you can take an oath. and that you're swearing in the name of Hashem, God of heaven, that you're not going to take a daughter for my son, Mibenosa Kanani, from the Canaanite women that we sit amongst. Only these people. Eliezer himself is a slave from the same place, but he's making him take this oath over here, even though Eliezer was his right-hand man. It's amazing that Avram somehow does this. Like, where's the trust over here? What happened to the trust that happens within Eliezer? So we're starting off that Eliezer is an Eved. Eliezer is a slave. A slave does what his master does, but the moment a slave is free, he's off back to his own life, and he does his own thing. And we'll start off with the Malbim. The Malbim says that he tells Eliezer, when you choose a wife for my son, can't choose from these Canaanite ladies. Not going to work out. Why not? What's wrong with the Canaanite ladies? It's pretty painful for Eliezer if you're a Canaanite slave anyway. So what happens over here? It says the Malbim, quoting the Ran, he quotes as follows. There's a reason why I don't want you to have to marry these people. And this is a great lesson, this says the Malbim. There's certain types of mitzvos that every mitzvah in the Torah helps us in a certain way. Sometimes the mitzvah in the Torah is going to help us in a way of our actions. It's going to perfect us into a better person. And sometimes they're going to help us in our belief system, in aligning ourselves with godliness and the like. When they help us with our actions, they're also going to help us with our godliness, but not necessarily the other way around. So what he says is as follows. So he says, when you perform a mitzvah that has, or you act a certain way that has an effect on your midos, on your character and the like, that is actually going to pour forward on your children. Your children are going to recognize those character traits within you. When you perform a mitzvah or you act a certain way that relates to your belief system, belief systems don't necessarily transfer down. What does that mean? You can have a person that believes in this form of religion, and their child will decide to switch over to this form of religion. Totally different religions, or religiosity in its own religion, right? In Judaism, you could say more religious, less religious, Reform, conservative, Orthodox, you can go that gamut. In Christianity, you can be like, this one's Baptist, and this one's Catholic, and this one, all these different things. And then you can have pagan that goes into godliness and the like. You can switch off, and it still doesn't change the nature of how the person actually lives. Okay? What that means is that a person's character defines what's going to transfer to their children, but not necessarily their belief system. The belief system might not necessarily transfer down. So what he says is that when you choose a wife for my son, I cannot have you choose them from the people of Canaan. You can go to another place where there might be idol worshippers there, but at least they have proper character. You go to my family over there, at least they have somewhat, their character is much more sane than the people that we're living with over here. So if you were to choose a daughter from Canaan over here, that would be terrible, because her belief system may be able to shift, but her character system may have a hard time actually shifting over here.
What, can I ask a question?
I know the question already. The question's on loving.
No.
Then I already. Well, I'm 2 questions ahead of you. But go ahead. What's your question?
So he was his slave, but he was a great teacher. He was teaching everyone Torah. He was the biggest scholar at that time.
Good.
So if he's the biggest scholar of the time, how can you become the scholar without actually believing in what you teach?
Excellent. So the answer is that he is the scholar. The answer is he has perfected his midos. But at this point, he's still an Eved. He's still a slave. And something is going to shift. And when that shifts, then it's going to be like, I get it. Okay? So he is that scholar. And each one of us has that level of scholarship to ourselves that we'd like to promote certain values to our family members. And it's important for us to realize that when our kids do or don't take on those values, we want them to take on the values of who we are as a person, of the character that we have. And most of the time you will see that in your kids. A lot of times religion gets in the way, and when religion gets in the way, we think that character is being shifted as well. Not necessarily so. We convince ourselves that the character is shifted, but in most cases the character hasn't really shifted. It's really the belief system that has actually shifted over here. So this is the words of the Malbim. Those are very, very much paraphrased by me, not exactly the words that he says over here. But he says that there are certain things that you're going to do. They're going to make a roshim. They're going to make an impact on your life. If you do a sin, because there's some type of sin that you do, uvaguf lefisha midos yefalu b'shlichus. I can't read that word over there. Okay, so he says that in essence, what's going to happen when a person does something, those things that are purely, we'll call it character-based mitzvos or sins, that's going to have a real effect. It's going to have a real effect. And that real effect is going to transfer down. He says those midos, those character traits. He gives examples. A person gets overly angry. When a person gets overly angry, it causes blood to boil. When his blood is boiling, that becomes part of him, and then he transfers that into the physical makeup, the physical DNA of his children. This is the people of Canaan. So those things that only have a roshim on the nefesh, which means not the overall mezeg, not the overall temperament of an individual, even if they're false beliefs, they're not going to have that effect. Those are the words of the Malbim. Okay? And so therefore, that's just important that what Avram notices, the nuance in Eliezer, is not just Eliezer, the people of Canaan, is that they have bad midos, they have bad character. So you ask the question, but Eliezer didn't have bad character. What a special guy. Not even, can we say special guy? What a special individual that the Torah is going to say, right after that, it's going to start the whole story. Eliezer is going to go out there, he's going to plant the day for a miracle to happen. So Hashem, if this is the right one, I want this and this to happen. What happens? Boom, it happens. Okay, and the miracle happens. After that whole miracle happens, he gives the rings and the jewelry over to Rivka and says, wow, you gave my camels to drink, you gave me to drink, here's the jewelry, because for sure you are the one that's coming to my, what do you want to call him? My master's son? What's a master's son, what is that called? It's like, it's my master once removed? I don't know, how do you define that, right? Whatever it is, it's not like cousin, I need a term for that, So, then he gives her. Then he says, "Do you have your family?" Sure. He doesn't even care where she's from. Let's go. He knows for sure that the miracle has happened. He goes over to the family, and then he repeats the story over to the family. When he repeats the story over to the family, he leaves. There's one nuance that's left in that Rav Schwab points out. We'll explain that nuance in a moment, and that's going to be the subtlety that's going to exist over here. So, what happens to Eliezer? Eliezer is a servant. He's basically a servant the whole time, but then something shifts, and we're going to read in the verse as this idea shifts, and we'll see it. The slave took 10 camels from his master, and he took them out, and he said, Hashem, if this miracle is going to happen, okay, I'm not going to go through the miracle again. And as he finishes speaking to God to hopefully have this miracle come, and Rivka shows up out the door, and basically, she's a beautiful looking girl, whatever that means, not discussing. He runs over there, so can I give you some, he says, can I have some water? She says, no problem, I'll give you everything. And says the pasuk, "Vatamaher vatar kada el hashoka." She runs, she gets the water, she runs again to bring more water. She gives him to drink and the camels to drink. And here is the nuance: v'ha'ish mishta'ela, and the man was bewildered, dumbfounded. What's another word for that? Overjoyed? No, he was in awe, and he was shocked as to what actually happened over here. Macharish, speechless. Ladas, to know, Hatziach Hashem Darkomo, did Hashem make this whole thing just happen just like that? What was the nuance that you might have missed? He converted from an Eved, from a slave, to an Ish. It says the verse over here, Va'ish Mishta'ila, and the man suddenly was amazed. Why was he amazed now? And why did he become a man? And it's a very simple answer. The answer was,
he prayed to God and he got what he asked for and he realized it.
And at that moment when that came to fruition, that's when he shifted from being an Eved to a man. He shifted from being a slave to a man. What just shifted over here? Very simple answer, I could say. You know why? A miracle happened to him. Before, miracles happened to his master. But now they're happening to him. Whoa, I got powers. Hold on. This is good. This is special. But that's not what makes him into a man over here. What makes him into a man is he shifts out of the world of being an Eved Kanani, the people from Canaan that Avram says, I don't want to have anything to do with, not in my family, and now he becomes a man. What was that major shift that happens? Let's take a look over further. Okay, so he says to her, can I, who are you? Fine, can you have a place to stay? No problem, here's who I am, give you a place to stay. He comes in, he comes into the house, right before he comes out, Vayikod Ha'ish, and the man bows down, he prostrates and bows down to Hashem. No longer an Eved. And now he comes into the house. And we see the whole story that happens with Rivka's, with Lavan, not the nicest guy, fine. He sees all the jewelry, he says, what's going on over here? He says, tell me what's the story. He says, let me tell you the story over here. I'm here to do business. I need to get this girl married. And I got to take her out. Okay, so here they go. Vayomar, and he said, Eved Avraham Anochi, I'm the servant of Abraham. And Hashem blessed Avraham with everything. And he gave him all the money, everything he needs. And they had a son. And my master made me swear that I cannot bring anyone from the Canaanites. I can only bring it from Beis Avi, from the father's home. And I said to my master, Ulai lo telechei shachrei, maybe she's not going to go with me. And here's the answer that we're waiting for. This is a famous answer that everyone speaks about, that it says over here, Ulai, perhaps she doesn't want to go with me. What was the idea of perhaps she doesn't want to go with me? Rashi quotes, very simply, the word Ulai is missing a letter. It should have a vav in it. The vav is not there. There's a subtlety in Eliezer's words. What's the Ulai? You know what Ulai means without a vav? It's Elai. Va'omar laduni, and I said to my master, Elai, what about for me? Maybe Yitzchak can marry my daughter. Says Rashi, Eliezer had a daughter. Eliezer had a daughter, and now he would like her to marry this one over here. You're Eliezer. You're a servant of one of the richest people in the world, who has cattle, livestock, everybody loves him, nicest guy. You're next in line. But you're not, because you're a slave. What if your daughter marries? Then you're next in line. Beautiful. But what happens? Rashi says over here, Eliksiv, Bas Haisalo, Eliezer. Eliezer had a daughter, and he wanted to find a wife for her. A husband for her. And then maybe this will actually work out. Maybe Yitzchak can marry my daughter, and this is the happiest ending. This is a beautiful ending, amazing ending that we can have over here. It doesn't go that way. Why not? Because Eliezer is cursed. He's from Canaan. Can't marry into my family. But a few pages ago, we told you he became an Ish. But he's no longer that. You know when he became the Ish? When he realized that Avram was right all along. That the plan was, I'm not taking from you, I'm taking from someone else. So he creates a plan. The plan comes to fruition and goes, boom! I realized that Avram was right the whole time. It cannot be for my daughter. It can't be for my daughter. It's got to come from somewhere else. So when the miracle happens and he sees that Hashem is orchestrating the whole story over here, he now changes himself. That story of my daughter, potentially, it's totally off the table. It's not even an option. It was never an option. I thought it was an option this whole time. As long as I thought it was an option, I am a slave of Avram. I am a Canaanite slave. The moment that I realize it's not an option at all, that's when I can become a man. And that's when all the things I've worked on, all of this time, being Avram's servant and following and teaching all of his Torah, that's when now it comes to fruition at this moment. My total devotion to Avram, now I see it. So Rashi says over here, it's the famous question that they asked, I believe it's Rav Shrab that asked this question. Wait a minute, when did he say, I have a daughter? He said it over to Avraham. He hinted subtly to Avraham, maybe Yitzchak won't want to come. Maybe he won't want to come. You know why he won't want to come? I got something else. I got a backup plan. I have the backup plan. So when Avram said, I want you to take a wife from me. So Eliezer turned to him and said, what if it doesn't work out? You have another backup plan? You have another backup plan? I got a backup plan. That's what he was saying. But I think it's Rav Shrav that asked this question. why is the ulai missing a vav when Eliezer tells it over to Lavan? It should have been missing the vav in the first time the story actually happened, not when he's repeating the story. So he says, no, it's exactly happening over here, because when he said it originally, he didn't even realize his subtlety of his daughter. He said, maybe it's not going to happen. What he really meant was, I hope it doesn't happen, but that was subconscious in his own mind. He had no idea. When he tells the story over to Lavan, now he's like, I can't believe it. When I asked that question to Avram, maybe it won't happen, it's because I didn't want it to happen. And now when I'm telling you the story, Lavan, now I can reveal the actual truth. I wish it would have happened to me. But now is when I actually see the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth really is that before, when I asked Avram that question, I really had no idea, but I really cared about myself in that whole story. And that's the beautiful thing. That's the subtlety that Eliezer, at this moment, when he sees the miracle, realized that his whole subtle movements that he had was totally wrong. And at this point, that's when Eliezer actually becomes an ish. When he sees the miracle happening, and now he tells the story over, now he is the bearer of Abraham's Torah. Because he's no longer thinking about himself, he's now spreading the word of Hashem through the entire thing.
Eliezer was Jew or Canaan?
Eliezer was a Canaanite. That's right. And Avram said it cannot be. It cannot happen this way. Even though you've studied in my house all this time, it can't be this way. I can't have it. I can't have you married.
What does Ish mean?
Ish is man. But he becomes a man. Right? The Ish Moshe. The man Moshe. It's referring to something of great stature. So I just want to So the Rashi quotes an idea that's, I'm suggesting it, I don't know if it's correct, but Rashi quotes the following idea. Rashi says that, there are a lot of laws that we have of the 613 commandments, many laws, right? Some of them are like two words long, very, limited things, about how you have to do certain things, and how you shave, how you cut your hair, how you do certain things, a few laws. When it comes to this story over here, pages and columns in Torah are used up, especially when Eliezer tells over the story a second time. It's a repeat story. He tells over almost the same thing. So Rashi says, Yafasi Chasan Shel Avdei Avos, that the stories of the servants of our forefathers are sometimes more powerful than, I think the wording is, than the mitzvos themselves. The mitzvos of the forefathers' children, of our mitzvos. That the stories are so powerful, teaches us that, first of all, number one, stories of tzaddikim and the people that hang around righteous people, teaches great lessons unto itself. But I thought perhaps over here that the reason why it's so powerful is because the subtleties that you notice when a person speaks and what their real intentions are so fine, you have to really read it over and over again. That's where we're going to repeat the story again, just so we can be able to really sense those subtleties. Very powerful subtleties. And again, as I mentioned, throughout the Parsha, you see subtleties. A letter missing here, a letter missing here, conversation here. And all these things have subtle undertones that we don't recognize until you actually get into the psyche of what the person's actually thinking. On this, the Shemi Shmuel has a comment that the reason why Abraham did not want Eliezer's daughter to marry Yitzchak is because of the fact that you are in the category of Arur, cursed, and you can't leave to the category of Baruch. You can't leave to the category of blessed. You can't, because you come from Canaan, and Canaan was cursed by Noach. Noach cursed Canaan after Cham and Canaan. We're not sure exactly whether he was sodomized, whether he was castrated by his third son. But either way, Canaan now had this curse associated with him. So if you came from there, you were cursed. So says Hashem Shmuel, I understand he was cursed over there, but what did Eliezer really do wrong? What was really, he had a daughter. Come on. You love your master. Everything he had a daughter. There's something so bad about that? So he says as follows. What Eliezer did was a similar act to what happened to Cham and Canaan when Noach left the ark. When Noach left the ark, remember, he left the ark, and then he plants the vineyard, gets drunk, and his son, assumingly son, perhaps grandson, but his son went and castrated him. Either sodomized and castrated, or just simply castrated him. That's what the Gemara gives the two interpretations of what actually happened to him, because the other two sons have to come and put a blanket on top of him. And if he gets up and he curses that youngest son. What was Cham's issue? Cham had an issue, and that was, I don't like the new world order that you Noach are presenting to the world. I don't like it, number one. More than that, though, Dad, if you have another kid, let's look at who's in the world right now. It's you and Mom, and then it's me, and my brothers, and everyone's got their wives, 3 of us. You add one more person to the world, we got to divide this world in 4. Now it's divisible by 3. Add one more person, and I no longer have the large portion that I had. This is not fair. Why should that be? So Cham wants to put an end to that. Let's leave the inheritance the way it actually is. No more kids for Papa, and then this way the inheritance remains the way it actually is. So, what Cham said was, let's look at this over here. Let's go back 10 generations. 10 generations, Adam was around. He had 2 kids, Cain and Hevel. One guy knocked off his brother. Well, that made him as the primary inheritor to the world, basically. And now, we've got 3 kids over here. Right? We have 3 kids over here. I don't need a 4th one to prevent this inheritance from actually happening. So what was Cham's issue? So his wording is like this. He was afraid. He was worried that Noach would have another child, v'yigra chelik Yerusha, and he would take away from his portion of what his inheritance was going to be. So his entire sin stemmed from the fact that he was only cared about himself, and he wanted to make sure that his legacy would be as big as he wants. Fits very well into Chayei. Now I can have 1/3 of the world. That's what Cham's thinking. Knock off my father's ability to have children, and then I get the Yerusha. I have my legacy now that I'm going to be able to promote.
He didn't think to kill all his brothers to be alone.
Who knows? Good question, right? Good question. Maybe he said it was so bad because when he heard what happened to Cain, he had to sit and wander throughout the world. That was already that was worse, and then Cain was killed. Maybe in that case, I'm not going to kill. No, murder's terrible. He just heard in the ark that God said you can't kill. What he did wasn't killing; he just castration, right? So what was Eliezer's issue? Eliezer's issue was Yerusha. What's my inheritance going to be like? What's the future of my life going to be like? I have a daughter. That's what it's going to be like. And therefore, he was focused on his Yerusha, focused on his future, of what he was going to pass down. So he says, Eliezer, that he was this great tzaddik with the Amunah of Avram. He never really thought about himself. And he was always against whatever a person like Cham would think. But that only changed, that real essence changed within him when the essence of klala, that essence of cursing, left him, when he removed his needs for himself. And that's when he realized that the wife for Yitzchak was going to come from somewhere else. That's when that ish actually comes. You know when legacy really comes? When you're not thinking about yourself. That's when the legacy actually comes. So that's the most beautiful thing. We're thinking about how we're building our lives and our legacies. That is going to come when it's about what I do for everyone else. That is the ultimate legacy that we can build. Again, we see with Sarah, we see with the Cave of the Patriarchs, we see with Sarah, the wife for Yitzchak. Now we see with Eliezer in the most beautiful ending over here. He becomes this man because he recognizes that if he's focused on himself, there's not going to be any legacy built. Legacy is going to be built when you're focused on others and the true essence of the world. That's where we're going to stop over here this evening. Any questions?
Yeah.
Questions?